Welcome to another Activating Abundance episode. I am going to start today's episode with a question. How great would it be if you could go through life knowing that everything you desire can be yours? If you just had unwavering faith, like even if you looked around at your current circumstances and the dreams that you have seem impossible, you still believed. Maybe it's a house on the other side of town, that best-selling book you've thought about writing, that soulmate you want to spend the rest of your life with. Whatever it is, maybe it's just simply a life where you wake up happy and excited about every single day. And this has been on my mind, the subject, because I just finished my 3-part training, my free series called Ignite Your Second Half Soul, where I shared the 3 ingredients you need to make your second half your best half. And belief is the second ingredient. I talked about the first ingredient, authenticity, in episode 182. So feel free to go back and listen to that if that topic interests you. And you may also want to listen to episode 183, where I interviewed Nancy Dubé, one of my students from the Second Half S.P.A.R.K school. And she shares her incredible story in that episode about what can happen when you are operating in self-denial, basically being inauthentic, but not even knowing, but you're basically suppressing who you really are and not even realizing it. So her story is pretty incredible. Ingredient 2 is belief. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version today as best I can of what I covered in the day 2 training. But if you'd like to go deeper on the subject, I'll give you a little secret backdoor URL. You can access it because enrollment is closed, but the replays are still up. So you can go deeper on this topic that I'm covering today, and you can hear some really great stories that I share, examples I like to use. Brings the things that I train about to life when I use examples. And then we also do a couple fun exercises. So you can find the training for just a few more days at notyouraveragegramma.com/ignite. So, and that's a website we have set up, and it will be up through next Thursday, February 3rd. So get over there now if you're curious. So, all right, but I'll leave you in suspense about the 3rd ingredient until next week's episode. I'll talk about that next week, unless you're the impatient type and you want to go check it out beforehand, then you know where to go, right? So you can go check out that series if you want. So let's get to what I feel is the most fascinating ingredient. And it's fascinating to me because I belief it's about belief, and I believe that there is magic involved with this one, because it's a subject that most cold hard skeptics will likely have a problem with, because skeptics need evidence, and with this topic often there is no evidence. If you do believe and then you get evidence, then obviously you'll become less skeptical. But it's really hard to embrace some of these things if you're, fully skeptical. So that's why I like to use examples. So, and although I can be a skeptic about things, I've come to believe with all my being that the things that I share and train about on this topic are valid, are facts. But it is a little bit magical. So I want to preface this conversation by saying that. So let's start with the definition. I always like to, look things up, Google them to see what is the definition of that. So the definition of belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. So you have to believe that it exists before it actually comes to fruition, before you have the evidence. So, and then, so how definitions have 1 and a 2, and the 2 is trust, faith, or confidence in someone or something. So when I talk about belief, sometimes I use trust and faith interchangeably. So if you hear those two words, then it's the same thing. So I've come up with three aspects that I teach, three facets, aspects of belief. And they are: trust that you are here for a reason. Trust that your gifts and how to use these gifts are why you are here. That's facet one. Trust, facet two, trust the process. Trust that there is a force greater than you at work. It's like your team. They're there behind you, but you can't see them, all around you. Okay, and facet three is trust your instincts, which I also refer to as your gut or your heart. So anything like kind of like body, trust anything that your body's telling you, feel into it, right? That's instinctual versus your head. Okay, the opposite of your head. So I'm going to cover these facets in this episode today. So let's start with facet one, which I said, trust you're here for a reason. So that's destiny, right? Destiny, fate, that you came here to serve a purpose, that you came here to do certain things. So, it's a written agreement, right? I like to think that I had a conversation with God before, with my soul, and God had a conversation. And there were things that I needed to learn. And there were things that I needed to do while I was here to make the world a better place, to live my best life. And so that's my destiny, my fate, my dharma. I don't know if you ever heard of the word dharma, but I remember watching the show Lost, and they had this place on the island that they found, and it was called it was Dharma. It was the lab. They found a lab, and the scientists were working, and the project, I think, was not the building, but the project was Dharma. And so I was just like, oh, Dharma. But then later I realized what Dharma was. And so, yeah, so that's basically, synonyms of destiny, right? So, and what I like to say is, like, where you are in life, what if the phone rang and it was somebody from not Earth, put it that way? Maybe it's your guardian angel, or God even himself took the time to give you a phone call. And he says, just checking in to see where you are on this agreement we made, Lori. How are you doing? How are you progressing? And, it would be like kind of a wake up call, be like, what agreement? Like, I don't even know I had agreement. So, I love this perspective because I didn't get this perspective until very late in life. And then I'm like, WTF, what am I doing? I feel like I have any purpose here. I don't feel like what I've been doing and what I do for my job is really serving really any great purpose. I don't feel like I'm helping anybody as this project manager in this corporate entity. And so, yeah. And honestly, the company that I work for had a really great mission, but I was so far removed from it and not really feeling a part of it. And so you need to feel a part of a bigger mission and that you're contributing, I think, is the bottom line, right? So I started asking all these questions, and I started like, well, what was my agreement? What, I need to figure out what that is. And so I started to like make it my top priority to figure out what that was. And I realized what that was is it's whatever makes me really lit up, what ignites my soul. And I need to do more of that. I need to do more of that. And then in my case, not every case, but in my case, because things can light you up where you don't make money doing it. But in my case, I was able to leave the job, my corporate job, and do something that I created and could earn an income from. But, purposes are all over the place. People, people are volunteers, and, people are, they do things just that, people, especially my age, who are able to retire and volunteer and do amazing things. So, but it's just like, what purpose are you serving? And that is if it feels good and you're making the world a better place, that's what the agreement is all about. So, yeah. And what if you knew, I love this, when it comes to destiny, and we always think, oh, well, one of the problems is, if I knew what my destiny was, I would have been doing it by now, or I would have had these gifts by now. And you compare yourself to other people, because that's what we as humans do. So then I think it's really important to kind of reframe your past and consider, what if you knew that every aspect of your life was placed in your path for a reason? Like every obstacle, hardship, tragedy, every experience that you might deem negative is really a lesson to teach you what you now need to teach, what you need to now help people with, because of your wisdom and your knowledge of that. We think life circumstances are like happen to us, not for us. And we don't ever think that our life circumstances are actually just, it's better than going to a class and learning it. Because when you go to a class and learn it, that's book learning. When you experience it in real life, you know it deeply. You know that deeply. It's not just this like, brain processing information. It's like this like feeling into it when you experience it. So what if you knew every aspect of your life happened to you, so you could live to that agreement? So like where you were born, the places you lived, the neighborhoods in the, your friends in the neighborhood, and the people you met in school, and your teachers, and the parents you had, and the spouse or spouses you've had, the partners, I say, because like boyfriends have taught me as much as my spouses have, the children you birthed, or the children you have that you didn't birth, adopted children, foster care children, the race that you were born with, the gender that you were born with, all of these things. How about we reframe them and say, how is this a part of my destiny? What am I supposed to do with this? And make the world a better place. So that is, all the things under Facet 1 that I like to talk about when it comes to belief. Facet 1 of belief. So Facet 2, the universe has your back. So the universe is working for us. And sometimes when like you have, maybe you get into a fender bender and you're like, Jesus, I'm having a bad day. So, and so you think things, sometimes if you have a really bad day, you're like, everybody's against me. But we don't think about it. Just like I was talking about destiny, we don't think about it as this is and I apologize for my dog barking. He's all the way upstairs. So that's just my little side effects there that are happening. He's not a big barker, but for some reason, while I'm recording this, he's barking. So anyways, yeah, so we don't think the universe has our back in those circumstances. If it had our back, wouldn't like our life be peachy keen every day? But no, just like things are and you have this destiny, you have this agreement, and your life circumstances are part of like the lessons you need. The universe is part of that package, and it's sending signals to you. It's sending signals to you. And I'm not saying the car accident is, maybe the car accident is like, maybe you should have stayed at home, or maybe you were supposed to meet somebody when you had this car accident. I have a really crazy story about a car accident. I didn't even think I was going to talk about this, but it came up, so I'll share it. My first husband, when I was in college, I went to the beach with my friend. So the beach was about, an hour. Well, the beach was closer, but this one beach we were going to was about an hour away. And we came upon an accident. And so we pulled off the side of the road because it was like bumper to bumper. Nobody was moving anywhere. So there was this little gravel area where we could just, park. And, college kids, we had our bathing suits and we got out and we got on our car and we were just sunning ourselves on my car. So there was this accident and finally it cleared up. And when we moved on, fast forward years, I don't even know how the subject came up. I think it came up because my husband and his friend, we were out to dinner with this couple, and they were talking and they used to go to the beach every summer. And they were like, oh yeah, we go to the beach every summer. Oh yeah, that's right. Cause I remember I went to the beach with them one summer when I was dating him. And so we were dating, we went to the beach with this couple and they were talking about their annual trips. And they said, remember that year where we got in an accident? And do you remember the woman was pregnant and the ambulance came and took her? And I swear to God, I'm getting chills right now from telling you the story. But we were pulled off on the side of the road, there was a woman who was pregnant who was in that accident being put in the ambulance. So my ex-husband, my first husband, and I were at the same accident at the same time. And we didn't meet for probably a couple of years after that. Maybe I was meant to meet him there if I'd gotten off my car. But isn't that crazy? That's so crazy. We don't know. The universe is always feeding you information. And we tend to dismiss things that we don't like as obstacles instead of saying, what, like, oh, could I meet somebody from this accident? Or when I take my car to get repaired, maybe something else is going to show up. So there, the universe is always listening and always trying to guide you to your destiny, to that agreement that you made. And we can be as thick-headed, and that's what we do as humans. We block everything and all those messages, partly because we're not even aware. I didn't know about any of this stuff until I really started learning about how the brain works, and getting really great teachers who knew this stuff and had evidence of it. And then you start piecing together. It's crazy when you start to understand the stuff, you start to look back and things come to you and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you realize you do have evidence, but you never saw that as evidence before. So, and there's actually science behind this universe has your back concept. There's universal laws, and there's 12 in particular that I teach in the Second Half S.P.A.R.K school. But they are, just to run down the list: law of vibration, law of attraction, law of divine oneness, compensation, polarity, correspondence, inspired action, cause and effect, relativity, gender, perpetual transmutation of energy, and finally, the law of rhythm. So these are all laws of the universe at play, and they're scientific, but many of them, this is the magic. This is the magic I was describing. So another law is the law of gravity. So that's just an example of another law. So there's scientific reason behind these. And once you start to learn about them and then think about them as it relates to your life, it's super fascinating. You really start to understand, yes, the universe is working for us and not against us. But we can help it. We can help it. And there's things called limiting beliefs. And these limiting beliefs are kind of basically, we put thoughts out into the universe. And when we have really negative thoughts, the universe is thinking, oh, she wants that. Oh, she's thinking about it all the time. So let me give her more of that. So you have to really be careful with what you think, because the universe has your back. And you could be, and if you're in these circumstances that you feel like you can't get out of, That's where you should look first, is start to become aware of what the thoughts are and try. And and that's why I love this whole abundance series, is when you bring abundance into your life and start being grateful for the things you have, the universe, hears that. It's like, I want to give her more. I want to give her more. And so, yeah, gratitude is a big piece of getting your thoughts on the right track, so the universe can serve you better. So I use this analogy of like, what if you, in my training, like, what if you trusted the universe like you trust something you trust like every day? Like you trusted it like your car is the example I use in my training. It turns on every day. You don't think you're going to, get in there and turn the ignition. It's going to not work. You trust your car, you get in it, you're going to go somewhere, you're going to get back, you don't think about that. But we don't trust the universe. Like, oh, it's going to take care of me. It's going to be everything's going to be okay. We always think the worst. We always think, oh my God, the worry warts, spend so much of their life worrying about things. The statistic I think is like 99 point something of the things you worry about never happened. We don't worry about getting in our car and driving it. Maybe if you had a recent accident, that's more front center of your mind. But most of us have so much experience getting in our car and driving it. We don't have any worries. But because we don't have experience on the things we want and the things that we desire, we're not trusting that it's going to be delivered to us, right? And we're thinking, and even taking steps and taking action towards that which you want, you avoid doing because you're like, you think the worst is going to happen if you do it versus the best is going to happen. And only the best can happen if you're always leaning into your heart and leading to the things that make you feel good and that serve a larger purpose. And when I say serve a larger purpose, it doesn't have to be like the masses. It's usually serving your community, serving your, doing the things that, it can be just like doing good for, going volunteering at the old ladies home, or I say it's the old ladies home. I'm an old lady now, but like the old folks, I'm aging myself, aren't I? The assisted living home. What's the proper terminology now? Where my mother lives. But yeah, it can be just, something that's making one person's day better. It can be standing in line at Target and smiling at somebody and telling them you like their outfit. Just having a nice conversation with a stranger that brightens their day. That's making the world a better place. Serving positivity and positive energy into the world doesn't have to be some huge, big, responsible thing. Because that might not be your agreement. That might not be your agreement. People have different agreements. Everybody's agreement is unique. So yeah, but the problem with the whole scenario that I described about trusting the universe, like you trust your car, is that when we don't trust something, it's that we kind of distrust there could be fear involved, right? I don't trust it because something bad's going to happen. And so what happens is that our mind lets fear overpower trust. And we want trust to overpower fear. And sometimes that requires surrendering. Okay. Surrendering to a greater power. I have a really great story in my training, not to entice you over there or anything, but it's a really good story about a mountain climber. And it's like crazy. When I was doing some research for this training and I found that story, I was like, oh my God, I got to share it. Every time I share the story, I get chills when I talk about it. It's a bit of a tear jerker. So just be prepared. And then facet 3, trust your gut. So, and that is essentially something I ignored pretty much my whole life, which is why I woke up unhappy and unfulfilled at midlife. But if you ever had a situation where you had a feeling something wasn't right, like something just, but then you did it anyway. I mean, I remember so many times watching Oprah and her interviewing somebody, and she's like, it's that gut thing. It's that gut thing. And they had this gut thing, and then they ignored it, and then they were attacked. by, a bad guy or something similar, or they were, a bank was robbed, or, something similar to that. Just this feeling that something wasn't right. Sometimes people do it, and they're going somewhere and they're just like, I have this bad feeling. And so they maybe go on a detour than where they would have gone. And then later they hear that there was an accident, right? So that's following your gut, trusting your gut. So, and it can happen with situations, it can happen with people. So, and then there's the opposite where you get this good feeling, maybe an instant connection with someone you just met. I had that with my now husband. I remember I first laid eyes on him. I was 18 years old and he was on the rugby field. And as soon as I hadn't noticed him before, and I was dating a rugby player. So I was like, who's that? So and my boyfriend at the time had broken his arm. And so we were sitting watching the game together. And I saw this other guy and he was super cute. And I was like, who is that? So that's when I first saw him and first heard his name. And then I saw him later at the college bar and we had an instant connection. I went and introduced myself to him. And from that moment on, I mean, he's always been like, we've had this connection. So that's an example. I have two really good movie examples. I don't share this in my training. So you're lucky that you're here listening, because you might, if you're looking for good movies, these are two good movies. And these are exactly this, where it's like kind of this kind of divine intervention. It's like this instant connection kind of thing, where there's something more to that human connection there. So, but there's two movies, Serendipity. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it came out October 2001. And it's funny because when I was going to look to see when it was released, I was like, oh my gosh, remember the world then? That was just like 1 month after, the September 11th tragedy. So we were in a different place then, but this is 20 years ago, almost 21 years ago. But it stars John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. I used to think it was Beckinsale, but it's Beckinsale. And so they're a couple who it basically, the story follows a couple that was separated after a fateful meeting one night in New York, and then tries to reconnect years later by following their destinies. But it's a really cool movie about kind of this like knowing. It covers a few of the things of belief. It's like they were destined to be together, and it was like this connection where later in life, it's like me. I mean, why didn't I trust my gut when I was 18? We didn't get married. I married somebody else. And then like years later, we ended up back together. So I think that's one of the reasons I really love this show, because it talks about this like going with your gut kind of scenario. And then the other one I really love, which is even earlier, is 1989 with Sybil Shepherd and Robert Downey Jr. called Chances Are. And the song, I think there's a Cher song that goes along with this movie that's really cool. I was going to actually do it because when I watched this movie, 1989, I was, 8 years into my first marriage and wasn't very happy. And we had just gone through marriage counseling, and I was thinking a lot about that person that I loved and lost. And so it reminds me a lot about my husband now, because but anyways, it's a little bit of a different story though, because what happens in the movie is in the very beginning of the movie, so I won't really ruin it for you, but in the very beginning of the movie, the husband gets hit by a car and dies, and his wife is pregnant. And then what happens is 20 years later, her daughter, who she's pregnant with, starts dating someone, and it's Robert Downey Jr. And it's actually the reincarnated husband. The husband has come back and he's now dating the daughter. And they know, they have this knowing, even though they don't know because they're human, they can't know, right? But they have this instant connection, and he starts to remember, he has this weird like vibe, right? So those are really good examples of kind of like, I guess not just Facet 3 where you trust your gut, but it's knowing that these messages are coming from somewhere, and it's not your brain. It's coming from somewhere in your body, and it's coming from this higher self that you aren't necessarily connecting with. So because that we can't, we're humans. And so we can, there's certain tools like meditation, and you can get to like open that connection, and you can get these like whispers. But bottom line, we don't know everything. We don't know everything that, we only have our own little perspective and our view of what's happened in our life. And so not past lives. And so that's what trusting your gut is all about. So having that connection, but also knowing you have a destiny. So these movies kind of speak to both of those things. So anyways, I thought those movies examples were fun, but in terms of trusting your gut, I was the queen of logic, I say, because whenever I got these intuitive hits, I call them intuitive hits, nudges, universal downloads, I would ignore them. And so that's why I ended up at midlife unfulfilled and unclear about what my gifts were and what I was supposed to do. Because I was busy, working, head in the, well, you could say sand, but head in the computer, and body on the hamster wheel of life. And so I never had quiet time. I never got connected to that higher self and those messages that would have led me and guided me. So we not only need to trust our gut, but we need to start recognizing what the messages from our gut are and making more of them happen, because they're there and they're trying to talk to us. But I was like shutting it up. I like had my hand on my higher self's mouth, essentially. And honestly, I was so busy talking, I wasn't listening. I was so busy in my busy life with like, and more comfortable in the noise than the silence, which is a gift. So, and then the other thing with trusting our gut is, when we use our logic brain and we shut down our intuitive mind, what happens is our brain, it's that skeptic brain coming in. Our brain is like evaluating things. And a lot of this times happens when you're trying to make a decision. So you're trying to make a decision on something like, do I take that job, or do I move to this new place? Or, sometimes they're big life choices, right? And we're always looking in the past for evidence. Like, okay, well, when I did this other job, then that made me happy. And this job is different, so maybe I won't like this job. But on the other hand, this job has this thing, and maybe that would be better. Okay. So you're like talking to yourself logically. It's kind of like a lawyer, this side, that side, which side are you going to go with? Right. So you're always looking to the brain and like a scientist does, right? Instead of, how about sitting in silence and seeing what comes up? Because that is where the answers and they might seem like crazy. I actually say in my training that it's like the crazy voice in your head. It's like this crazy lady is in my head, and she's telling me to do things I am super uncomfortable with, and they don't make sense. But that's kind of what our intuition does. And because what we hear from it is like, take this step, do this thing, is just like I was saying in the car accident example. Like, you might not know why that happened and it doesn't make sense, but it's going to lead you to the right thing. You have to believe that message that you're getting, even though it sounds crazy, and you can sit on it and you can ponder on it, because I'm not saying you sit down in silence and you get these crazy messages and you're like, okay, I'm immediately going to blah, blah, I'm going to do it. You're just basically, sit on it. You can also ask your subconscious before you go to bed at night, for more information. Like, I had this thought, can you tell me more? And then you might have a dream about it. Your subconscious is always working for you when you're not like using your brain on other things. So, you be listening for that crazy lady and not just looking to the logic brain for answers based on past evidence. We want past evidence. Past evidence informs us, yes, but it can also limit us because that's the only thing we're using for our evaluation. So our decision that we make oftentimes, and this was me, and I only share this because I know it from experience, and that's why I can teach it, is because the decision is we react totally based on logic, even if our gut tells us something else. And that actually happened to me when I got married the first time. And I had all these voices in my head the day I got married. But, you're there. Everybody's there. The invitations are sent out. I can totally relate to people who go through with something that in a marriage kind of scenario. And they're like, I knew I shouldn't have, but I did. And you don't want to disappoint people, but their gut was telling them something different. And in the end, now we're divorced. And in the end, we're both married to wonderful people and very happy. And so, it all, leaning into your intuition is going to ultimately make you happy. And so those are the 3 facets. And I hope you enjoyed them. There's a lot more in my training, but, and just for a quick review, the 3 facets of belief are that you have a destiny and that the universe has your back and that you need to trust your gut. And you need to know all these things are real. They're magical in many ways, but they are real. And when you lead your life and go through life with this unwavering faith that if you put out positive thoughts into the universe, then all your dreams will come true. The things you want, the things that you can put on your vision board. When you are operating from that point of belief, then you start to take the right actions and you start to do the things and you start to listen to the messages and you start to, it's a really great, it's really a great tool, or a great tool to have in your toolbox. That's really what it is. It's kind of, it's not like a tangible tool. It's kind of more like this, like invisible tool, but it's a tool, and it's just believe. All right. So next week, we'll be talking about the 3rd ingredient. All right. Hope you enjoyed this episode.